What's going on, Dominators? Rico Garcia here. This is all about sales and closing and so much more. Today, we're joined with a very exciting guest. I had the pleasure of meeting Jim at the Violand Executive Summit. He was teaching one of the courses that was available there, and such an amazing guy. He had one of the best presentations that I've seen. The cadence was on point. By the way, super funny guy. He makes a ton of voices while he's speaking, so keep an ear out for that. You'll probably get a laugh or two. But Jim is a sales pro, a closing pro, and we cover quite a bit of ground here. Without giving away the entire podcast, let me just give you a couple of quick tidbits as to what exactly it is that we talk about and why I'm so excited about this particular episode. Clearly, sales is the fuel that runs any business. Without good selling mechanisms and techniques and training, nothing else really happens in your business. Jim takes a very unique approach in the sense that he breaks things down from a personality perspective, right? Identifying who you are as a manager, as an owner, as well as if you are a lead salesperson, how your selling style meshes with other individuals, right? Especially if you're dealing with facilities managers or, real estate agents or insurance agents or whatever your demographic is, how your style fits into their particular mold, and also how you can tweak your style to best sell those kind of individuals. And he does this through very simple tests and basically disc assessments that help you kind of forge everything, and then from there break down your sales style and provide you with additional training. Guy's absolutely amazing. He's an author of several books, one of which is this amazing book, which is called Execute: Selling in a Distracted World, which, by the way, there's going to be links to, first of all, a really special offer and package that Jim has put together just for our Domination Tribe that you're going to want to get your hands on. Make sure that you check the video description below as well as the show notes. And he's also going to have all of his books listed there that, depending on where you're at and what role you're playing, there's definitely going to be something for you. So make sure that you check those out. You're going to want to execute on this as quickly as possible. No pun intended on the title of the book. So really exciting podcast. I think that you guys are going to take away quite a bit. We talk about not only sales psychology, but we also talk about the follow-up process. We talk about the importance of incorporating technology, simple things like video, and how you can get a massive competitive edge over anybody else that you're selling against, and how you can win the sale using video and tons of follow-up. And there was just so much to go ahead and break down. This is a podcast that could have very easily have gone for 3 hours. You try to keep it as condensed as humanly possible because we value your time. But if you want to learn more, make sure that you check the link below. There's going to be some amazing resources that are available to you that Jim was gracious enough to put together for the Restoration Domination Tribe. So I hope that you enjoy that. And without further ado, let's jump right into the episode with Jim Ryerson. Let's go.
Welcome to the Restoration Domination Podcast, where you learn actionable advice that moves the needle and helps service-based businesses dominate. Here's your host, Rico Garcia Jr.
All right, we are live, and I must say I am extremely excited because today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that is selling, closing. And with us today, Jim, thank you so much for jumping on the show today. Are you ready to help us dominate?
I can do Rico better than you can do Rico.
I
Hustle,
think you can.
dominate. There we go. How's that?
I love it. So thanks again, man, for taking the time to hang out with us today. You and I had the pleasure of meeting, or at least I had the pleasure. I don't know. Maybe sometimes I'm a little overbearing and I'm like, Jim, let's talk about this. But we had the pleasure of meeting at the business summit with Violan Management out in Kent University, which was an amazing experience, which, by the way, for all of you dominators out there in the restoration arena that haven't attended the event, I would certainly put that in your calendar, put a reminder somewhere, check that out. But Jim gave one of the best presentations that I've seen. The cadence was amazing. The energy was amazing. And then one of the courses that he did was extremely, extremely powerful, talking about sales psychology, talking about time management, talking about everything that for us as business owners, as dominators in our space, really help and move the needle. So I'm really excited to have you on and, talk to us about sales and sales psychology. So, but before we dive in, for those that may not be familiar with the name, they've never heard of you before, can you fill in some of the gaps on the intro and tell everybody who you are and exactly what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. Sold for 25 years, had a business with, at one point, 52 employees. So from an ownership standpoint, was on that side managing people. We were a distributorship, so it was primarily sales related. We didn't make anything. So it was a selling type of environment. Did that until 9/11. After 9/11, significant impact on the business. We cut it in half, but we built it back up. Sold that in 2002, and then took a year and basically wrote what I had learned over 25 years. I mean, I came to this conclusion that the most important item is being likable, having your customers like you. So I wrote a book titled The First 100 Days of Selling. Took a few years to write that, started speaking about it. And for the last now almost 19 years, I just go around and work with corporations, leaders, salespeople, the sales process, and how to become more likable when you engage with a customer.
And that was something that's really interesting to me, right? The likability factor. So off camera, you and I were talking about the differences in selling style. For me, I have a lot of sales training. I spent years and years and years as a high ticket salesperson in the investment arena. That was my bag, right? And again, mind you, that is a very high octave form of selling, and there's a very unique style to that selling. So for me, even though I have all of this training, I never quite dissect it so much to where I articulate it. For me, it's just a simple process. It's like, be your authentic self. Be comfortable with who you are, and then ask for the order. If you ever get stumped, shut up, ask for the order. If you ever get confused, you don't know where the person stands, shut up, tie down, ask for a micro agreement, and then ask for the order. And then the flow will just continue, right? Either they'll say, no, I'm not interested, and you walk away and you move on to the next one, or you just keep there and you just keep closing, right? But that's my unique style, very, very aggressive. And you mentioned something about the likability of that, being genuine only matters if, right, that genuine you is likable.
The customer, right? You have your shtick. I mean, everyone has their shtick. This happens a lot with owners of businesses. They started the business on their own. They were the salesperson. They were their own salesperson. Maybe it was just a band of one. They went out and they had success. Now they get ready to grow the business and they hire salespeople. And here's the question. By and large, they're going to hire people that are like themselves. Again, the same way that people buy from people that they like and they like people like themselves, the same thing happens when you interview. You tend to fall in love with somebody that has a similar behavior style to you. Now, that's great on one hand, because you'll probably get along well, likability will be there, but you tend to surround yourself with a bunch of people that are just like you. And so a big part of this is becoming self-aware. You know what your shtick is. And until you took that survey and it came back and it said, oh, well, here's who you are. This is your behavior style. And then we were able to tell you what types of clients are going to fit well with you. And your previous job, which you had a ton of success in, a lot of those clients have similar styles to you. They were results-oriented, driven people. So your style of selling fit beautifully. Now, you try to sell my wife, your dad, because she'll find you too aggressive, too assertive. She'll pull back and use something like, well, I need to think about it, which is another way of saying we're not talking anymore. So being sensitive to what their style is and then adapting, kind of, big word during COVID, pivot. So pivot to modifying a few of the steps in your process to get that customer that's dissimilar to you to like you and move forward with you. So yeah, being authentic, a lot of books written around that. Yeah, that's great as long as your authentic you resonates with the customer you're talking to.
Right. And something that's an interesting concept about selling, right? Because we are complex individuals, right? Like even Jim Ryerson, like there's multiple versions of Jim Ryerson's. There's the version that we're getting right now. There's a version when you first wake up in the morning, the version with your kids, the version with your wife, same thing with me, right? There's different versions and intensities of who we are. And something that we called in the industry was having the broker ear. Right, was because, again, you got to remember, like a lot of this, we weren't seeing people face to face. Like we were talking and that's it. So we had to listen intently to tonality, to the words that they were using. Right. So we had to identify via their cadence, via their enthusiasm, whether or not they were paying attention. We had to listen and try to identify who this person was. Now, throughout that process, there were people that were much more analytical. There were people that were very much, enthusiastic to get, they would get excited about an idea and then immediately get the gun ho. And you would sell these people slightly differently, but there was still this authentic version of you that needs to shine through. So how do you identify, and you mentioned the survey, so I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that, but how does someone who doesn't quite know what their style is and doesn't quite know who their perfect prospect is, how do they go about identifying that?
Well, first of all, you don't have a choice who your perfect prospect is because you call on a given customer segment. And so what we do when we do the workshop is we identify, and it's in the book, we identify or have you identify what are the titles of the people that you call on. Now, if you're in an in-home sale and you're going, well, I'm calling on a spouse and a husband, wife, spouse, significant other, well, then that's called crapshoot. I mean, then you better get really good at listening to what kind of questions do they ask? What's the tone of their voice? Do they talk very fast? Do they talk slow? Are they interested in details? Do they pick up on, your conversation and questions? There's a lot that you can do when it's an in-home sale. But back to your former life, you called on a very specific set of titles. And by and large, a little bit of stereotyping here, people that are accountants tend to be like other accountants. Okay, accountants tend to be more analytical, more task and detail oriented. And by and large, they tend to be a little more introverted than they are extroverted. So a title, while you can't apply it across the board, we use it in the room to reinforce, okay, Rico, you are driven, you are focused on results, and you're also influencing. It's what's the experience going to be? What's it going to be like? I mean, hack, hustle, dominate. Everything is around the experience. Getting ready for this podcast today, everything was around the experience. That lines up with your style. But the reality is, there's another 50% of the population that's on the other side of that, which are the accountants, the detail-oriented, the analyst, the folks who are looking for two things, information and security. Can I trust you? So if I'm going out and knocking on doors, the reality is you get one chance at a first impression. So when that door opens and that person looks at you, the research is like 7 seconds. You have 7 seconds. So we go as detailed as which eye do you look at when the person answers the door? What is that first 7 seconds like? Because you can lose it in that moment. And so everything comes down to how do you become more likable? And we know that people like people that are similar to them. So on a front porch of a house, you're doing somebody's project and you decide you're going to do, the neighborhood hustle. So you're going to just knock on some doors and things like that. We have a very specific process that we suggest you use. And people go, I could never do that. I just can't walk up to a door. Well, you can't walk up to a door because you're thinking about that you're trying to sell them something. Why don't you do this? Why don't you walk up and knock on the door and let them know that you're doing some work across the street? And if your truck is parked in an inappropriate place, or if some trash from, whatever you're doing blows into their lawn, here's my mobile number. Give me a call. I'll take care of it. Is that sales? Well, you become very likable in that moment.
Right.
Maybe they'll go, well, what are they doing at their house? Yeah, I saw your truck out there. Hey, can you give me an estimate? Here's the deal. It's just likability, but you have like 7 seconds. So it's not like, hey, I'm doing some work over there. Here's my information. If you ever need an estimate. Yeah, that's a tough sell.
Right.
But if you angle it from
the feel is totally different. The feel is totally different.
Right. And so it's around likability. But if we take it back up a step as an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner today, how do you manage people that are dissimilar to you? I mean, you trust me, if you have a bunch of Jims on your sales team, you're going to get a lot of leads. You're going to close a lot of sales, but it's going to be messy behind you. Okay. Behind Jim, there's always a body count. I didn't follow through on something, I'm selling left and right, but there's some detail orientation stuff that has to happen. So you as an owner, if you hire Jim, because you're kind of like me, a little bit of a risk taker, started your own business, then by nature, you're probably not that detail oriented. So you're going to have to hire some people. So who's going to do your accounting? Trust me, it's not going to be Jim. So right. You hire an accountant, it's going to be one of those, what we call the compliant, but task and So how do you manage them? Because truthfully, I'm going to slow down on this one. You sell the way you buy.
Amen. I was going to actually talk about that.
Yeah. And you communicate the way you want to be communicated with. So if you are a driver like me and you're talking to a compliant like your accountant, bookkeeper in the office, I, Jim, have to communicate differently with that person. And it's going to feel like an out-of-body experience because it's not the way I want to be communicated with. But once I know what your style is, and we give a lot of detail in the result in terms of how to approach this person. How do you motivate somebody like that? How do you manage? Those are two different things, manage and motivation. Communicate. How do you communicate with them? What don't you do when you talk to them? What should you do when you talk to them? And the more dissimilar these people are, the more adaptation, the more modification. And I'm not asking you, back to your authentic self, I'm not asking you to be someone that you're going to have to go to confession for tonight. Okay, that's not the angle on this. If you're listening to this podcast and you're like, hey, he's asking me to do something that's wrong. No. There's nothing wrong with listening. There's nothing wrong with planning. There's nothing wrong with being on time. There's nothing wrong with managing the expectations of the customer. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But all of those are different depending on what the type of the customer is.
I love it. So talk about, there's obviously a lot of sales trading out there. And there's a lot of books on psychology, and there's a lot of books on, matching and pacing and leading and all of this stuff, right? And mirroring, right? We've all heard all of these terms. But however, salespeople being the alphas that they typically are, right? The extroverts, they kind of figure like they always have all the answers, right?
Right.
So considering all this data that's out there, all these studies that are out there, do you feel that there's enough real, genuine curiosity from salespeople into the world of selling, into the world of actual persuasion and closing? Or do you feel that there's just not that enough salespeople don't take the time necessary to really fine tune their craft?
Well, great question. We find that leading with the assessment is critical because it's a 10 to 15 minute investment of time. So if I'm going to be doing some work with a client, I always start with, hey, let's do this. Let's go slow. You have to like what we're doing. I don't want you to commit right up front. Why don't we just do this? Let's assess your sales team. And if you're the leader, you need to be involved in that process as the entrepreneur owner. And what happens is they invest 10 to 15 minutes of uninterrupted time. And as soon as they finish, they get the result back and they look at 22 plus pages of information. And I mean, we're talking always the response is, oh my gosh, this thing like hit me on the head. How did this do that with just like 10 minutes? Wow, how did that? Well, by the way, this is like 40 some years old. It's been around for a long time. Thanks to dating sites, it's become so amazing because we have so many data points. Because every dating approach out there, whether it's eHarmony, Match.com, where you take the test, part of that test is your behavior style. So we've got lots of data points. And the more, as you know anything about research, the more research they have, the more valid things become. Lots of content since the dating world has happened. So when they get their result back and they look at it, they go, wow, this is really cool. Now it reads positive. In other words, it does point to some things that you might be challenged by, but by and large, it's a positive reinforcement of your strength. What that allows us to do is now you like us because you're like, this is so cool. How did that do that? Well, now when we come to the room, we show the group, like all the team, here's where everybody is. And then we, back to what we talked about a bit ago, then we go through the process of now what's your customer? You better know yourself, and we go deep on that in the results. But then it's like, what's your customer? And using some stereotyping, what are the titles you call on? A little more challenging, I know, with the in-home side. But generally, we arrive at a point where they go, wow, this is crazy. A good percentage of my customers have a dissimilar behavior style. And that's like the velvet sledgehammer to the forehead. That's like the ball bat. And it's like, hello. So guess what? If you just remain you, your authentic, genuine self, and you don't adapt for the needs, the unique needs, the dissimilar needs of your customers' buying style, then you will lose more often than you should. And then the work begins, which is, okay, now what do we do? Well, A, you know who you are. B, you know what your customer is. C, and this is a quick trip, we can tell you whether it's going to go well or not so well. And then the last piece, which is where we spend most of our time, is, so what are the techniques? How do you get somebody comfortable with you? How do you get them to open up and share information? In a big problem that we're running into right now, the book that I spoke on at the Violan Leadership Summit was the result of some work that I had done back when I had some time during a summer about 5 years ago, went and got assessed for ADHD. And that's when it came back that, okay, I had it. I decided not to medicate, did a bunch of stuff to get more focused, and it's working. But here's one of the unintended consequences of that little journey for Jim is I suddenly realized we went back and we looked at all of the salespeople that we had assessed for 18 years. And we found that the vast majority of them fall into one, like a third of the different types of people in the world, 1/3 segment of that. That's where most of the salespeople hung out. And that area tends to be populated by people who have distraction issues. Right. So it was like this huge aha that what we've been doing for especially the last, 16, 17 years was really hammer on, have a plan. What are your questions? What are you going to do? How are you going to close? How do you overcome objections? Really getting into that detail. And we realized that, oh my goodness, this is why it's been working so well for 18 years, is a lot of the people we're talking to, A, don't plan, B, show up and throw up, C, overcommit, talk too much, overcommit, and then D, don't follow up. And it's right. That's like A, B, C, D, death.
Right.
And when they see their result and they go, oh my gosh, wow, this is so amazing, Jim. And you were there. I always start with the same question. Hey, before we get going, as a percentage, how accurate would you say your result was as a percentage? And you were there as you go around there. It's like, oh my gosh, spot on. No, that spot on is not a percentage. By the way, I already know you have no detail orientation. As a percentage,
right, immediately,
it
right.
was 100%. And it's like 80, 90, 100. And it's like, great. By the way, when people start going into the 70s, I'll poke on it a bit and say, let me ask you a question. When you read through it, were there some things that you disagreed with? Yes. Were those positive things about you or negative? They were all negative. Here's the thing. Is it wrong because it said that you were not called attention to something that you need to improve? See, you didn't like it, therefore it was inaccurate.
Right.
Here's a reality. Self-awareness. I learned this from a couple of marriage counselors years ago. Love this line. Self-awareness is curative. You can't get better if you're not self-aware.
Right.
So back to your question, there's a lot of stuff out there. Do you find that salespeople are really applying themselves and want to learn? What I'm finding is salespeople who have a growth mindset and want to get better start with self-awareness. Like, don't start reading a bunch of books about selling and psychology. Here's what matters. What do you do well when selling and when leading and when managing? What do you do well? And what don't you do well? And when you get that information back, now you're quote unquote self-aware. Once you're self-aware, now we can begin to make progress. So we all agree that, you talk too much. You're too aggressive, perhaps. You don't follow up. You don't plan. Great. Welcome to the club, because guess what? We're finding that after 7,000 salespeople have taken the assessment, you're in good company. And you're going to be great, because it's just
and one thing that I wanted to go ahead and plug real quick, just so that way the audience knows, the book which Jim was talking about, his book named Execute. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that here. And if not, if you're listening to the podcast, there's going to be a bunch of links to all of his books. But this was the book specifically that he was talking about at the Violan conference, which is Execute, Selling in a Distracted World. Awesome read. And then, of course, this whole assessment that we're talking about here, I know that, Jim, you have some ideas about where the audience can go and, do this kind of assessment. We'll talk a little bit about that. And this is it was a relatively quick and painless assessment. It was really, just a couple of minutes, but the amount of clarity that I saw, and mind you, I've done similar assessments in the past. So it wasn't my first rodeo, but the people that were in the room that have never really done the assessment, you could just see the aha moment. It's like, oh, yeah, this is my style. But I think from a management and an ownership standpoint, I don't think enough companies are really executing this with some of the companies that I speak with, some of the owners that I speak with. And I'm like, hey, how do you know the salespeople that you have? It's well, this guy's really great and he's really aggressive. It's like, he's always busy. Right. But what's his style? I don't know. So having like this kind of stuff, if you're, an owner, if you're a sales leader, having systems in place to start identifying who your people are and who your sales force is extremely important.
Yes. Not the least of which is just knowing how to approach them. And this is a little bit from the session that you participated in, but by and large, there's only one environment where we tend to be attracted to and want to hang out with somebody who is dissimilar to us. And, and I asked the question in the group, what's that one, who are you hanging around with or spending a lot of time with that, actually is dissimilar to you? Like they think differently than you. And it always comes down to love. Somebody will finally go, well, between the sheets, you get, it's like love, it's, in marriage and this, and I'm like, yes. So here's the deal. This is not a marriage summit. This is, the Restoration Domination. This is not a marriage conversation. But here's the question for all of you that are out there. If you are married or have ever been married, how difficult is that? It's like,
Right.
they don't think the way I do. They don't do things the way I do. Yeah, here's the news flash. They have a different behavior style. And what you need to learn is they're not broken. Don't try to fix them. Instead, what you need to do is understand who they are and then approach them in a way that works. Now, enough on marriage. What's different about that with selling?
Right.
You set up front, you had your shtick, ask for the order, take a step back, shut up, ask again. That's your shtick. That works great with financial brokers.
Let me actually interject here, right? So it's funny. So our industry, and I'm kind of against the grain and I get a lot of heat about this, and that's fine. Our industry, in my opinion, has been spoon-fed deals. Spoon-fed deals. Why? Because you don't need to have much of a personality. You don't need to have a whole lot of anything, to be quite frank. All you got to do is show up and say, hey, Miss Susie, nice to meet you. You have water. Don't worry about it. I'm a really nice guy. I'm not going to ask you for anything. All I need from you is a nice little signature, and we'll take care of the billing with the insurance. Don't worry. I'm here to help. So it's been spoon-fed deals. Whereas my approach, which boggles people's minds, is I ask for money. So we built the majority of our restoration business. And this isn't like 15, 20, 30 years ago. Till this day, like I'm still in the trenches. Like we're still doing this.
Right,
like we're not
right.
just, romanticizing
which makes you very relevant.
Right. So, and not to say we don't do insurance work. Of course we do insurance billing, but my first order of business is, hey, you have an issue. I've got a solution. This is how much a product costs. This is how much our services cost. How would you like to be paying for that? Ask for the order. And guess what? My cash flow is very, very different than a lot of other companies' cash flows. So again, even in our industry, I've still taken that style. And guess what? It works for me. And this is why I tell people you have to figure out what works for you. If you try to do a Rico style, it might come off really funky, right? You don't feel like I will joke around with people. And again, this is all on a case by case basis. There's some people that are immediately you hand them the agreement and they start looking at the agreement and immediately I'm like, okay, this is who I'm talking to.
Right.
I have to take a step
Perfect
back.
example of quickly identifying, this is their style. And if you push too much, now the beauty is I agree with you completely. You have a very motivated buyer. Like if you're standing in water,
right,
or you've got some smoldering ruins in the background,
and you're not asking for money. And you're not asking for money. You're saying, hey, basically it's like smile as big as you can. You're basically hiring people with a great Colgate smile and you're saying, just smile and hand them the pen. And that's like the majority of the issue.
One of the challenges there is, and again, we're getting into psychology a little bit, but it's a fun little, if somebody wants to go and do some additional research on it, it's called the autonomic nervous system. And it's that fight or flight. You've heard this for thousands of years. People were, literally our brains are programmed. A lion shows up, begins chasing us, a bear, whatever you want to call it. You have two choices. You either free, like fight, like going to fight the bear, or you run like crazy. Now there's a third version. There's freeze, which is right in the middle. You just seize up, which a lot of times that happens and then you get eaten. Now here's the thing. It's been a long time. As a matter of fact, I can't remember a time when I've been chased by a bear. And literally I can't. We don't anymore. But guess what? Our brains still work the same way. So when that person is standing there with water around them or sewage or a smoldering ruin or, a roof that blew up, whatever it is, their natural tendency is to freeze. So one of the key elements that we coach on when we're working in the restoration space is when you show up, a big part of that is your Colgate smile. You need to get them comfortable with you fast. But the other thing is their brains, and here's a great visual, their brains are running in peanut butter. Their brains are running in peanut butter. So your goal is to show empathy, give them security. I've done this before. We had one of these last week. Again, they're frozen. And you're going to put something in front of them that you want them to sign. They're frozen. They're literally like encased in ice. So how do I warm them up fast? I've done this before. Walk them through. Here's the first step in the process for us to do this, this, and this. All I need is this. I can get this going. but it's not aggressive. It's not like, and we're not overcomplicating things. It's just recognize where their brain is at, which again is part of the psychology. What they want is security, information, results, and a little bit around the experience. I'm going to get my crew in here. I've got the stuff on the truck right now. I can bring them in right now. I'll take care of this. I'll take care of that. All I need is this. Boom, off you go. And once we train on that, they understand it.
Right. So one of the things that I also think is really interesting, right? Because I know that there's a segment of our audience that says, well, Rico, wait, hold on. I don't only do residential. I also, I'm going to insurance offices and I'm pitching agents and, I'm visiting facilities managers and we're talking about, possibly getting them under contract. And that's a different form of selling. There is no cash. These are huge deals. It's different. Well, to that, I say, you're still not asking for the order. And again, now we're talking differences in style. My thing is I'm a busy individual, right? Like for me, I don't need new friends. And I know that most business owners don't really need more friends. They are willing to have business acquaintances that are mutually, beneficial. Mm-hmm. And if friendship stems from there, then all the better, right? But I'm not actively going out and be like, oh man, I really wish somebody walks into my office today, gives me a big old smile and puts, a box of donuts on my desk and says that they want to be my friend and then also give me a sale. Because the moment he walks into my office, I already know what's going on. So talk to me about the difference between being of service, because this is like this very new age woo-woo type of thing, at least for me, right? And actually selling. And just to give you a little bit of context as to where my mind is at when I'm talking about this, a lot of people are talking about today, and I'm sure you hear about this, is like, just be of service. Don't be selling. See how you can help them. Investigate. Really, really care. To that, I say that's fine. Underlying, like, yes, you need to like people. Yes, you need to actually want to be of service. But that's not why you're knocking on the door.
Right.
You're knocking on the door because you're looking to get something.
Right.
Like, and I hate the fact that nobody brings that up front and nobody's talking about it. Like, why is it that we have to be so woo-woo nice about it? You are knocking on doors. You are calling on prospects. You are getting in your truck every single day for one reason only, and that's to make a sale so that you can feed your kids, period, right? So how do you combat that? For me, I feel that the big smile, that the super wannabe, almost inauthentic likability, right, is very, very off-putting, as opposed to, and I think it's really disingenuous, and most people can see through that. And I think it's an uphill battle once you start that, as opposed to just walking in and be like, hey, look, I'm here to romance you. This is what this is what I call a pre-contract, right? This is I pre-frame what the end result is going to be. And I say, hey, look, reason why I'm in your office today is because I'm going to romance you. This is the reason why I'm here. I want you to like me enough and I want to prove to you how good I am at A, B, and C so that I can earn your business. If I can prove all of these things to you and you're happy with me, you're happy with my customer, you're happy with my company, and you're happy with the product services, would you have any apprehension about doing any business with us and possibly bringing us on? Well, that pre-framed everything, right?
Right. It's kind of an upfront agreement. Again, the term that you'll hear a lot is the upfront agreement. Great idea. Very uncomfortable for a lot of salespeople. So you're going to have to coach them on that. You're going to have to train them on that. What we try to do is start with like a pre-call plan. So it's like, what is your plan going in? And a lot of times the salespeople will go, get them to, build rapport. That's always real common. Build rapport, share our services, okay? And I write it up there, build rapport, share your services. Right. What else? And it's like pulling teeth, to get them to go and then to get them to recommend us. Okay. Well, that's the first sales related thing. Okay. That's something that's got a measurable outcome. If they don't recommend you, then all the donuts, all the this, all of that means absolutely nothing. So
I actually remember this portion in your course, and I'm like, I'm looking at Shelly. Shelly was to my right. I'm like, why is nobody saying close? Like close?
Because the room is full of what is typically the sales persona, which is really good with people, very likable, but in general, they don't want to push. because they have a fear of being disliked. And they, in the back of their mind, they're saying to themselves, if I ask now, they may say no. If they say no, that means I feel like they don't like me. If they don't like me, I can't deal with that. So guess what I just won't do? Ask for the business. But make no mistake, if you're bringing decent donuts and you're bringing lots of tchotchkes and you're taking them to golf outings and you're bringing stuff in from time to time, and you're not asking for any commitment, you're going to get played for a while. So I'm kind of
this is what I call this is the friend zone, right? Like we've all heard about being in the friend zone, right? It's like you all of a sudden, it's like you're pitching an individual, a successful individual, I would hope, a successful individual that has the potential to move the financial needle for your organization or for your personal paycheck, whatever you may be. They've already got a pre-existing relationship. They've been working with somebody else for God knows how long. And then you're just there. You're like, well, one day, I just romance this long enough and I just smile, then, maybe, just maybe I'll get lucky, right? Like to me, that's like selling without any direction. So Jordan Belfort talks about the 10-10-10, right? You got to get them comfortable on, and again, mind you, this is, for those that don't know who Jordan Belfort is, just watch the movie Wolf of Wall Street. All of the investment pitches were a stem of that form of presentation. But he would talk about the 10-10-10 rule, right? Get them to, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 comfortable on you, 10 comfortable with your company, and 10 comfortable with your product and or service, right? And a lot of times I feel like a lot of salespeople are just focused on the personal.
Right.
And yes, they'll sprinkle in some of the other stuff, but they never tie this 10-10-10 rule to the close, which the only reason why you're getting them to 10 like you, 10 like your company, 10 like your product or service is because you need to get them to close. Right. That's it. It's the reason why you were doing it. So how does someone overcome that and come to terms with what their actual role is?
Well, it's funny because when we did the pre-call plan, and everything we do is with salespeople in mind. So yeah, there's a lot of assessments out there. Ours is 10 to 15 minutes long. Why? Because we can't keep them on the chair any longer than that. So it's number two. People go, well, why don't you use Myers-Briggs as a way? Well, let me tell you, let me give you the reason why Myers-Briggs isn't going to work in this space. There's 16 different variations. And right now, salespeople sell the way they buy. In other words, they sell in one approach. And we're asking them to go to 16? Yeah, it's not going to happen. We broke it down into 4. There's like 4 different types of buying styles. Is that oversimplified? Yes, there are thousands of people out there. But in general, if you can figure out what your customer is in one of those 4 boxes, you can then know how to pivot and adapt. So when we do the pre-call plan, it's not like 17 pages. It's one sheet of paper. And you remember the objectives, because I'm trying to get them to recognize, why is asking for the business not one of your objectives? Getting a sale. Why is it build rapport? Let them know about my product. Understand who the competition is. Learn what their challenges are. I mean, that stuff is bubbling up. And you saw me in front of the room and I'm like, By the way, the Jim voices are just absolutely epic because he's actually toned them down, but he gets deep into the voices, which is great. Hey, for a salesperson to take time out of their day and engage with us, whether it's a virtual, Zoom related training in person, I look at it as I'm an entertainer. I have to keep them engaged and like on the edge of their seat. I'm never going to go over the edge. I'm never going to go past that line, but I keep you on the edge of your seat. So back to this. So we finally get them to agree with asking for the business as part of the objective. Now, there's a lot of other great objectives out there. Find out who the decision maker is. That's a brilliant objective. Find out what their process is and who they currently use. Great idea. These are all fantastic. There's only 4 parts to the pre-call plan that we give. Number 1 is know your objectives. Number 2, know the questions you're going to ask. So that gets into technique. And we're not going to go there in this conversation, but it's like we spend a lot of time proving to salespeople that the questions that they're asking are not good. And then fixing the questions so that they're good. And then section 3 out of the 4 is checklist, which is kind of goofy. But what we find is the vast majority of salespeople are not detail oriented. So if you watch the typical salesperson as they head out, there's junk falling out of their bag, they just jam a bunch of brochures in. You're like, what are you doing? Make some calls, they just grab a bunch of stuff and throw it in there. Our point is, and then they get, a mile away from the office and they realize they left their iPhone back in their desk. It's like, let's be focused. That's why when I wrote Execute, my primary idea is use technology. I mean, it's quiet. My phone will not go off. I will not get a distraction on my computer. My iPad will not sizzle with notifications. Why? Because I use the focus capability. And when I walk in to go meet with a prospective customer, or jump on a Zoom with a prospective customer, on my checklist, I have a checklist. And I've been at this for a long time. I have a checklist and it says, turn off the notifications. Because then I can, and you've been there. If you're a manager right now, tell me this has not happened to you. That you've been out with one of your salespeople on a call because you're riding along with them. And in the meeting with the prospective customer, their phone goes off. Or it's, they've silenced it. But now it's the annoying cow sound, And you're like, look at them with the death stare. This could all have been prevented if they'd had a checklist. So checklist, what's the fourth part, Jim? The next step. I want to know word for word how you're going to ask for the business. Word for word. Yep. Because what happens is they walk out of the office, it's like Tommy Boy, that scene in Tommy Boy. And it's so what's the most important thing? Look good. No, what's the most important thing? Ask for the business, ask for the business, ask for the business. But did you ever ask a salesperson? So let's just do it right now. Ask me for the business. I'll tell you, they're going to go, is this something you'd be interested in? So is there any way that I can expect to get referred? And it's like,
what do you think?
So what do you think? I think you should leave my office. So we go through the process of, let's write down exactly how you're going to ask. And it's going to be different for every salesperson. I don't believe that, this is the line to use. But there are some general principles of a great closing question. And if you follow those rules, life gets better for you. But it's going to be tough because your natural inclination is, it's going well. They love my donuts. They were like, even their eyes are going up when they go, oh, wow, really? You do this? Wow, you have CU crest? Wow, you got that? How many trucks do you have? How many? Wow, they're loving me. And that's when they look at their watch and they go, oh, I got another meeting, and you're out of the office. And you're like, what happened? You never closed.
Right.
Worse, you have no next step. So a big part of this is just, know what your objectives are before you walk in. Please let's have a wicked good list of questions that you're going to ask. I'm not worried about you talking about what your capabilities are. You basically are filled with that. I want to know what great questions you're going to ask. And then do your normal thing. And last but not least, be ready. So, and probably ask sooner rather than later, for the business.
Right. And part of this is, so we talk a lot about, or I talk a lot about scripts, and people confuse that, right? Because in my mind, it works a certain way. Just because you don't need to have an actual script that you're reading. Hi, Mrs. Jones. You don't need that. But I'm a firm believer in having a script that you take the time to write out and that you execute out loud and physically see how it fits on you. How does it make you feel? And then work through that flow. It's just like a really good presentation. Like when you give when you're on stage and you're giving a presentation, you didn't do that, flying off the seat of your pants. Like you thought through it. Like, what's my next slide? How am I going to transition into this? Right. And when you get really good at this, and you finally find a script that is true to you, that is still malleable enough to where you have room in there for the results oriented individual, for the really technical individual, and you've got some freedom in there. And you've got what I call, for me, there's three pieces, right? And again, this is just how it works in my brain. There is your main presentation, your main script. This is your bread and butter. This is how you're going to open up the line of conversation, followed by one to several tie downs or box closes in there, right? Boxing them in, canceling objections out throughout the presentation, answering their questions before they even have the question, because experience shows that people always ask the same stuff, right? You'd be hard pressed in any industry to say, give me 15 of your objections. Typically people jam out at 10. It was yeah, that's it, right? And then you have what I call your personal closes, and then your company closes. These are closes that build you up and then instill confidence. And then your company closes are the exact same thing, but relevant to the company and how they can service you, right? This means that you need to have this stuff memorized and feel comfortable with, right? So role playing is an extremely, important role in salespeople. But again, we feel like, hey, I am so good, I am so likable that I can just walk into any room and I'll just light the place up. And there's a lot more to it than that, wouldn't you say?
So you mentioned the word scripts. And one of the things I'll do in the room is say, I'm not going to script you, but I am going to demand that we write down certain talking points. That softens it for people. And they're like, oh, good, Jim's not going to script it. Well, just wait. Because the idea is, okay, you get your talking points down, but then you have to make those talking points work for you. Like, how would you do it? Now, I go the next step. I believe that role play is the fastest way to neuter someone's self-confidence because they're not prepared for it. And then you go, well, I just told you how to do it. So let's go, Billy. I'll give you the objection in your response. And, Billy soils themselves because it's they haven't had time to make it their own. So here's what I say. Let's write out the talking points. Let's get it down. You tweak it for you. Now I do want you to go practice it. Now there are free apps out there. Free apps that are like teleprompter apps. Now think about this. I stumbled into this. Pure unadulterated luck is that I found an app that was a teleprompter. So you upload your talking points like a Word document. You upload your talking points and then it's going to literally teleprompt you. So now you just read what you felt were going to be your close. Let's just go back to the objections. This always happens. I'll be in a room and I'll say, hey, who's the newest salesperson here? And, there's always Biffy raises. How long you been here, Biffy? 6 weeks. Oh, awesome. We're going to come back to you. Who's been here the longest? Rico raises his hand. How long you been here, Rico? Embarrassed to say it's been 47 years. Okay, great. Okay, so you've been here for 47 years. Rico, yes or no, have the objections changed over the last 47 years? And there might be one new one. So we've got all the objections up on the wall. They go, have these changes in the last 47 years? And Rico goes, no, they're pretty much the same. Great. Then I go back to Biffy 6 weeks into it. And I go, Biffy, so you came on board here to sell for this company. Yes or no? I'm asking you a yes or no question, Biffy. Yes or no? Has the company given you the responses to each one of those 12 objections that are on the board? They haven't changed for 47 years. Biffy goes, well, no, they really haven't. I'm like, let me tell you what that's like. We know you're going to get these objections. And we're going to let you figure it out. And let me also reinforce to you, Biffy, that when you get a negative in your life, if you get a negative, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you up and you get irritated, that sticks with you for up to 4 hours. So you send Biffy out there representing your company and you haven't given them any responses to the objections that you know that Biffy's going to get, knowing full well, because Biffy took the test with Jim, that Biffy has a fear of being disliked. So there's a reason why when you check the GPS on where's Biffy, he's always at Starbucks from about 9 a.m. on, because he's licking the wounds from getting laid out between 8 and 9. So let's fast forward back to your point. I do believe that you should demand that the salespeople show you that they have learned the responses to objections. But it's simple. Have them work as a team. We do that in workshops. We work on the talking points, not the scripted talking about how would you respond. And then we type it up and then throw it into a teleprompter, practice it over and over again. There are even teleprompters that are voice activated. So if you say the wrong thing, it just stops. That's called punishment. And then they practice it. Oh, last but not least, make a video for me, salesperson, and send it to me, illustrating that you've mastered that technique. Now, this is what we know from neuroscience. Right. The way to learn a habit is through repetition. Problem is, salespeople never learn how to overcome objections because they practice on their customers and it hurts. So they go, that one didn't work. I'll try another one in 6 weeks. And so if we build this up front, and then ultimately you're going to have videos of your salespeople responding to the objections, and that's what you give to Biffy, the next Biffy you hire. Here's how you respond to this. This is Wanda responding to the price objection. This is Jackson taking care of, we're all set with our current supplier. This is, Bobby responding to, we're all set. So why are we, it's like Groundhog Day. I love that movie. Actually referenced it in one of my books. The research was done on the movie Groundhog Day in terms of how many years would it take a normal human being to learn what Bill Murray learned in that 2 days. Remember, all Groundhog Day was like, it was like 3 or 4 days of the same thing over and over again. But he learned to play the piano. Remember that? Then he learned to speak another language. Yep. And he did this and that. And the answer was, you can go and Google this, fact check me on it. It was like 22 and a half years. So here's the question.
Right.
How long can you wait for your salespeople to sell? I'm fairly confident it is not 22 and a half years. So to your point, Rico, you have to help the salespeople to know, here's the great questions that you should ask. And here's how you should close. Here's how you should talk about some of the key features, benefits, and advantages and service that we offer. Here's how you should overcome each one or respond to each one of the objections. And I think if you equip them with that up front and make them self-aware, knowing, hey, I know where you're broken. We hired you because of your strengths, but we also know that every strength has a corresponding challenge. And now we can see that we're all on the same page. You are now self-aware. I am aware and you are self-aware. Now that we all agree, then let's work on a plan to help you get better. And better to me, almost always with salespeople, is have a plan, ask great questions, know your language, know how you're going to ask for the business, and know how you're going to respond if they say anything other than yes. So that's kind of a summary, I guess, of where we're at.
Yeah. So I want to talk about, so basically everything that we've spoken about up until this point has been about the actual selling, that initial process, right? We know how important that is. It's a contact sport. It's a numbers game. You got to get out there. You got to meet people. You got to shake hands. You got to kiss babies. You got to be likable, right? You got to be authentic. There's a lot of things that go into it. There's scripting that's involved. There's all of these dynamics that are going to make you a really good salesperson and ultimately effective and hopefully profitable, right? And valuable team of, your organization. But then there's this whole other aspect of selling and closing, right? And people always talk about the close because that's the climax. But in order to get there, not everything is what we would call like a one call close or a one visit close. There's a lot that goes on the back end. And that's what I want to talk about next, as far as follow up and how to effectively follow up. And something you spoke about was the power of video, the power of follow up using video. And that was very eye-opening for a lot of people. So before we jump into that though, let me just go ahead and take a quick moment and thank our sponsor. Hey, real quick, are you a restoration pro looking to hire top talent inside of our industry? We all know that labor shortages are real, but I may have a solution for you, okay? And that is Wylander. Why? Well, very simple. They are the go-to recruiting company inside of the restoration arena. Well, the reason I say that is very simple. They've got proofs in the pudding. They've got over 1,000 placements in all 50 states, plus Canada. And what that means is that they not only have the expertise, but more importantly, They have the connections to find that top industry talent that you and your team are looking for. So stop wasting time. Stop sifting through tons and tons of resumes and just conducting endless interviews. Let Wylander do the heavy lifting for you and help you find that right person to help your company succeed. Call Wylander today and start building that dream team inside of the restoration arena. Hey, Dominators, real quick, let me ask you a question. How would you like to increase productivity? How would you like faster claims resolution? And more importantly, how would you like to reduce litigation? Well, this is exactly what Impartial allows you to do. Impartial creates timely, accurate estimates for faster and fair claim settlement. Building upon Matterport's technology, the Impartial Scope tool extracts the relevant data embedded with pre-mitigation and post-mitigation scans and subsequently renders an exactimate or assemblability estimate that can be approved by a carrier without any hesitation. The magic here is that the software helps contractors generate mitigation and repair estimates for more rapid approval from insurance carriers while removing the burdensome administrative process. Each Impartial estimate is produced with objective accuracy using immersive 3D imagery and precise physical and geospatial measurements. Impartial, in my opinion, is one of those tools that simply can go ahead and change your business. And with so many features such as Impartial tags, timestamp matter tags, the ability to upload JPEG, PNG, ESX, and so much more. Impartial is that software that could genuinely change your business. Make sure that you check them out in the video description below or in the show notes and see for yourself. Hey, Dominators, real quick, let me ask you a question. Have policyholders struggled to come up with your money because it's held with the mortgage company? Or does the percentage of uncollected debt that you collected in 2021 exceed over 2.5%? Or even better, let me ask you this. Do you dread negotiating with your policyholder when it comes time to collect your final payment and deductible? So look, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then you need to check out Surety. You see, Surety is a third-party fund control company. And what they do is they ensure that you get paid faster and, more importantly, completely for the hard work that your crews are doing. Surety relieves not only the policyholder, but you of tremendous administrative burden while ensuring that the claims process, and more importantly, the proceeds flow via ACH to the rightful owner, you, the restorer. And here's the best part. For less than the average credit card fee, Surety delivers on numerous fronts. So here's what I want you to do. If you want to learn more about how Surety can help you, I want you to head on over to www.surety.com/dominate and request a free demo today. Now listen, Restoration Domination listeners, just like you, are going to receive a really cool offer. And here it is. You're going to receive an exclusive offer, which includes free processing for the first insurance claims check and 3 months of free access within their network. Again, that's Surety, SURETI.com/dominate. All right, we're back. Going back to where we left off, we're leaving off on, the follow-up process. The money's made in the follow-up, right? Because not everybody is going to go ahead and close that deal right away. And where a lot of salespeople really drop the ball is on the follow-up. And there's a lot of reasons why salespeople drop the ball when it comes down to follow-up. One of them is they're constantly trying to talk to new people because that's kind of the nature of the game. If you stop talking to people, then your pipeline runs dry. So how do you overcome that? And my opinion, and I think that your opinion, is automation. It's using technology to your advantage. So talk to us a little bit about how you are teaching people, instructing people, coaching people on how to use video, how to use technology for this follow-up and ultimately get closer to the sale.
First of all, look at the research. And even coming out of the pandemic, top-level decision makers were in the 70 to 80% of top-level decision makers would prefer to not talk to you face-to-face. They would prefer digital self-service. And this is from McKinsey & Company. You can go, Google the study. but 70 to 80% of top level decision makers preferred digital self-service, which means the internet, or what I refer to as async or asynchronous selling, which is either Zoom or some kind of video after the conversation to remind me of what we talked about, what the next step is going to be. So that's one thing we need to understand is this is what customers are now demanding. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit trail of all the other elements related to why this makes sense. So now let's go into the psychology. Number one, people tend to take information away visually and remember things that they see visually far more than they do auditorially. So if you tell me something, it's literally the old statement, in one ear and out the other. Yeah, that's it. So you go on a presentation. It seems to go well. You ask for the order and they said, you know what? I need to talk to the committee. Maybe you're selling to an HOA. I got to bring it to the HOA, or it's a commercial sale. I've got to bring it to, we've got a team that's looking at it. Now you got a problem. Okay. The person you talk to may like you. They may actually just resonate with everything you said. But here's the thing, you don't know about the rest of the group. And what is the statistical probability that everybody else on that committee will have the same behavior style as the one person that you spoke to? How's zero? Zero good for you? So now it's like, okay, how do I get me, and I'll just kind of bring all these words we've been talking about, how can I get the genuine, authentic Jim in front of the rest of them? Oh, I know, I'll ask. Hey, is there any, and they'll always butcher it with the yes or no, is there any way that we can, that I can meet with the committee? And the answer is no. Matter of fact, half the committee members are working from home, and Wanda's decided to move to, Bumflip, Oregon, because it's so beautiful out there and she likes to walk trails. And you're like, I will never be able to get in front of Wanda unless you flip that camera on and you jump into that little, microphone, and it's like, hey, John, thanks again for agreeing to meet with me today. I just wanted to summarize what I heard you say, some of the challenges that you're dealing with, reiterate how we would handle your project, or how, the differences of our capabilities. And then at that point, you can decide, how or even if. Now, you make that little video, and then you send that video to John with the very clear definition, and feel free to send this to anyone else that might be interested. Now, here's the deal. Path of least resistance. John's like, he's on the committee, but there's the rest of committee members. Does John want to do your work? No. What's John going to do? Forward your video. Now, all of a sudden, 9 other people see Rico. And here's the deal. If you're a manager, if you're an entrepreneur, put your phone down, come in, listen to this, please. Do you want to have the absolute easiest approach to know how your salespeople talk about your product and service? Do you want to know what they're saying to customers? Would you like to have a seat right next to them, knowing how they talk about your features, benefits, and advantages? The answer should be yes. Okay, you can either ride with them for the rest of your life till your butt becomes a cauliflower, or maybe you tell them to start to master sending a video after a sales conversation, and then send a copy of that video to you. Now, by the way, salespeople hate me when I do this. They're like, Jim, my video makes my face look fat. No, your face is fat. I mean, the bottom line is, video, the reason people don't like video, I love this, by the way, the reason people don't like video,
you're like, no.
Because
your face is actually fat.
Because it's a reverse image of you, the mirror image. And it's like, you see you in the mirror every day, you like you, because the law of familiarity. Now you get a video, and the video is actually you. It's not a mirror image, it's you. And you go, I don't like that. Man, I got a fold on this side of the face. Where did that come from? It's always been there. So Bottom line is, salespeople have a host of reasons why they can't do it. But again, if they understand that this is where it's gone, if you've got 70 to 80%, McKinsey & Company, this is only this study was only 8-9 months ago. 70 to 80% top line decision makers would prefer digital self-service. Wow, that's a bit scary. So, and even I'm seeing this a lot in the real estate space, that after you close, they send a video to you talking about the next steps and this and that. I think that's cool because, it's kind of like basically even you, if you're doing, decent sized deals, it's, hey, I just wanted to thank you. And now I want to introduce you to my team. And you talk about, there's this person, here's a supervisor, here's a job site, here's that, here's what we're going to be doing next. If you have any questions, oh, by the way, in this email, in the body of the email are the contact information for all the people. Now, I'll tell you, if you're a behavior, you're a buying style that's called, it's called a steady, they're looking for security. If you're an analytical compliant, you're looking for information. By the way, if you're a typical salesperson, the influencer, you don't need this kind of thing in your life. You buy stuff and then it doesn't work because you didn't do any research on it. That's not your customer in some cases. And if it's a committee, guaranteed there's somebody on that committee that wants security and information. I think video, and again, I saw it abbreviated the other day, which I'm going to now take on. I always said asynchronous selling. That's a lot of work. Number one, try to spell it. Async, ASYNC, async. Start to think about async. Oh, that's cute. That actually rhymes. Think about async. So it works for managers because you get to see your salespeople. Salespeople, just, stop fighting it. I'm an old man. I've been married 40 some years. Just come in, listen to me for a second. Here's the deal. Stop practicing on your customers. You can make a video.
Yeah.
And then watch it and your best on your sales pitch. And if you're like, I said and ah 78 times in that video. Guess what? Newsflash. When you're in front of customers, you do the same thing. Annoying. So it's like, wow, I need to fix that. How do I fix that? Hey, it's just the fact that your brain runs faster than your mouth. And it's because you're that kind of salesperson. And I love you because you're me. You just have to have the confidence that your brain works 5 to 7 times faster than your mouth. And you have to manage that. And you can do it without drugs. You can do it. So anyway, I know we kind of got off the path there, but yes, I am absolutely a believer in video messaging as kind of that new way to engage a customer that, through every step of the sales process, especially committees.
Absolutely. And just forget studies for a second, forget, everything else that we could say about the power of video. And let's just look at something very, very basic. The majority of people are not using video to close, to follow up, to do anything with their prospect. So if your competition is not using video, why on God's green earth would you not pull out the phone, pull out a camera, pull out your webcam, whatever, and go ahead and use that as a strategic advantage? You're going to live in their text messages. You're going to live in their email. Like there was a time back in the day where text messaging for business was taboo.
Anymore.
That's not the case now, right? Like that's not the case now. Text messages are typically opened like a ridiculous rate, right? Like close to 100%, 90%. And when you send a video and it's got a little bit of text and then a video, it's curiosity kills the cat. Most people will, out of sheer curiosity, because they don't get videos every day. They get videos of their kids, their wife sends them a video, they get something funny, but they don't get something from a salesperson via video. Because again, most people feel uncomfortable pulling out the phone and saying, hey, Mr. Prospect, it was a pleasure meeting you today. This is what we covered, blah, 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 blah. Whatever that looks like for you, they're going to watch that video and be like, I haven't gotten one of these before. That's interesting. The confidence, the follow-up, and they'll start creating this mind movie about how great you are. And guess what? That's a win. So if your competition isn't using it, take advantage of the playing field now, because 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it will be the norm, in my opinion. It's going to be 90% video, very little face-to-face.
Yeah,
take advantage of that now.
One of my one book that I enjoyed reading about a year ago was, I think it was called They Ask You Answer. And it was this idea that customers are spending more time on digital platforms before they engage with you face to face. It was Forrester Research that did a study, and they showed that customers were as much as 60 to 70% of the way through the buying journey before they finally picked up a phone and spoke with or agreed to meet with a salesperson. Now, 60 to 70%, you have to ask the question, what are they doing during that first part of the journey? Well, the answer is they're doing their research, or they're talking to other people they know. Hey, you guys had a mold issue several years ago. Who did you use? There's that referability thing. But I think a big part of it is they're doing some research online. So start thinking about this. It's one thing to post an answer to the frequently asked questions of your customer. It's another to post a video answering the frequently asked questions of the customer. So I think the whole idea of video, to your point, when somebody asks me a question like, hey, can you do this? Hey, how do I handle this? It's one thing to send I'll send you an email with something that you can read. And by the way, Bob, if you've got insomnia, this thing will put you to sleep. Or it's like, wow, it's a really quick video kind of going boom. I mean, think about it. Where do you go? I bought a car recently and I get it home and I'm like, I'm trying to program the button for my garage door. I mean, I go to the dealership site and it was horrible. Like I'm reading this step one. Finally, I had my iPad in the car. I just go to YouTube and I plug in how to program Mercedes-Benz. And it's like some guy in North Carolina. It's like, hi, my name is Ralph. I'm going to show you. And it was like, pause. I did everything that Ralph said. Everything works. And I'm like,
yep,
$1 billion company can't figure it out. Ralph in the backwoods. Right. I have no idea how Ralph makes money, or if he does, or if he just likes to have his face on video. But thank you, Ralph. But I think that's kind of the
right,
thing.
Exactly.
It's like, why?
And here's the thing too, right? Like taking it outside of the realm of just the sales rep, of just the prospect, for the business owners out there, for the, for the individuals that are actually, overseeing the entire company, food for thought. Video doesn't only work for your prospect. Video works and should be working on your site. This should be something that you incorporate. Let's say that you're pitching, facilities managers, or you're pitching, residential, or whatever it is that you're pitching. You should have and really consider having these FAQs in a live format video. Imagine for a second if on your landing page, which again, this is kind of like off topic here, but I just really want to get everybody's wheels turning here. Everybody has a traditional website and they just it's verbal. It's the equivalent of verbal diarrhea in a sales pitch, but on the web. So they're like, we do this and this and this and this and this. And there's links all over the place and people get lost in the shuffle. You really should have if you do Watermit for residential, you should have a landing page that says company name / or subdomain company, company domain, and then service, right? So it should be like Watermit, companyname.com. And then if you do fire restoration, it should be like fire, companyname.com. And each one of those should use the language specific to that one term that you're selling. And then above the fold, in other words, when people go onto the website, first thing that they see is they're brought to a welcome video that is a live video that people can interact with. And you can say, welcome, what brings you here? What questions can I answer for you? Ooh, well, now guess what happens? First of all, people are going to stay on your website a lot longer. Guess what? Google really, really likes that. And then secondly, they get to physically see how you explain these frequently asked questions and how you can bring them in. If they go from that to continuing to do research and they just get verbal diarrhea from the competitor, who do you think is going to be front of mind? It's going to be you, your company logo. It's going to be that relationship that you built in such a very short period of time. And guess what? Guess who they got? They got the best version of you, because you're not going to put the video out there of you being all lethargic. It's like, hey guys, welcome to the company. I'm really not in the mood today, but let me tell you what we got. You're not going to get that, right? You're going to get the dynamic you. You're going to get the enthusiastic you. You're going to get the good looking you. You're going to get the person who's ready to rock and roll. You're smiling, right? You're going to get that person. And then that person, that best version of you is now out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, selling you, your company, your services. And people will respond to that in a positive way. And in turn,
right,
it'll show in your revenue.
And if you've got, back to some of the cool technology things some hacks, there's your reference to hack. Rev.com, I use it a lot, where, if a salesperson, take one objection, give it to all the salespeople and say, hey, you don't even get to work with each other. All of you, please just send me a video of your response to this objection. Now they're going to do their best because they're like, it's almost like a competition. We'll give you a Starbucks gift card, whoever has the best. Do like an Academy Awards of responding to this objection. Now, when you get one of the 8 that's like, wow, Sally killed it. That was amazing. Here's the deal. Take the words. You can use rev.com. They just transcribe whatever the video is to text. Now you got the text, including all the ums and ahs. You clean all that up and you go, here's our new your word script, mine talking points, make it yours. But now we want everyone to re-record their objection response using the modified quote unquote Sally approach. And now all of a sudden I just think it's a great training ground. And by the way, there's nothing in it for me. There's nothing. It's not like I'm making money by people doing this. I know this works. But it is work. I often will use the line, sales is one of the easiest low-paying jobs out there. Sales is one of the hardest high-paying jobs. Gang, doing a video message is hard work. But here's the thing. Once you've done it, it'll take you 5 or 6 takes. Now you're building muscle memory around the talking points. Now when you get in front of the customer, beer coming at you, it's not going to be flight. You're going to stay in the game. You're not going to fight. You're going to be smooth. You're going to respond. And then you're going to, because you've already recorded your closing, back to Rico, you're going to ask again. And if we can get everyone on board with this approach, I don't care how small your company is today. I don't care if it's just 2 of you. Start now, because you will grow. And as you grow and you bring people on, you're not going to do what every owner does. Well, Bill, thanks for joining our company. I've been here for 10 years. I'm going to tell you how to do it. And you vomit on Bill everything that you've done, including probably do some things that aren't right. But you give Bill all this. It's verbal, so it's in one ear, out the other. And then Bill goes out, gets his lunch handed to him. And if you read anything about the current labor market, you know that they tend to change jobs faster than we have in the past 30 years. So if they're not liking you, Bill, guess what they're going to do? Go to another place. But what if you invest in them? Start right off the bat. Hey, I want to know who you are. I want to know how best to manage you, to motivate you. I want to know the best way for me to communicate with you. And here's the other thing. I'm going to invest in you. I want you to become self-aware of your selling style. And then we're going to we've got videos of, how Wanda responds to this objection. And I've made some videos of how I've sold for 30 years. And we're going to put you into a process so that you become the sales pro. And that's where I think you start to bring the asynchronous selling. You bring, putting these talking points together. Sales process is big for me. Map out what your process is. So you basically build a system, and it's all built around the psychology of selling. That's something that you can multiply then as you bring new salespeople on.
I love it. And there's so much more. Obviously this is like an endless topic, right? Because there's so much involved in selling. There's the self-mastery. There is the continuous steady. There is, the buying psychology from the consumer. And then of course, all of the peripherals, everything that goes into as in tools and videos. And there's so much that literally we can spend days and days talking about this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we're limited on time. So obviously you've written several books. There's, you're helping organizations grow. You're a speaker. You're definitely a mover and a shaker. If someone is listening to this right now and they're like, man, Jim's really got some amazing points, and they want to go ahead and reach out to you, they want to contact you, what's the easiest way for them to go ahead and do so?
We're going to have that in the link below. So there's a link that ties in to the Domination Restoration site, and we've got a package that's unique that we're offering for those listeners who are on this podcast right now. All the contact information there, and I do include my calendar if you want to have a brief conversation with me. I'll put that in there as well. I want to help you any way I possibly can.
That's awesome. Restoration Domination Nation out there. Listen, in the video description below, there's going to be links to everything. You could also find the individual show page at restorationdomination.com. If you're just listening on podcast or wherever it is that you listen, in the show notes below, there's going to be direct links to the special offer that we have for our listeners, and make sure that you check it out. And if you're out there, if you are personally selling, if you are an owner, if you are a team leader, sharpen your skills each and every single day. Use the power of technology, use the power of video, and don't forget, as always, hustle, hack, and dominate. I'll see you guys on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, your #1 resource for tips, tricks, and hacks to help your business grow. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more Restoration Domination. And follow our host at Rico Garcia Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.